All right, got another tutorial on um, basically the difference between the spacers. So this would be bearing spacers. So there's two main ones that you really need to be concerned with. I've never heard of another size. If there does exist, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to see what they are. But from my experience, I've been skating for about 25 years now. I've only ever seen two different sizes, and that would be 6mm and 8mm. So 6mm was pretty much the standard, going back from probably 2004, 5, around that time and prior. So a lot of older skates use a 6mm axle, and then nowadays the only skates that really use 6mm axles, at least that I know of, are kid skates. And the reason that they do that is that an 8mm axle is a bit thicker. It's a little bit sturdier, so adults, they're obviously they weigh more than kids do, so you need a little bit more heavy duty axle. I know in my experience as like an aggressive and like street and skate park skater, I've definitely bent my fair share of axles back in the day when they were 6mm. Now that they've moved up to 8mm, I have not had that issue. I'm also older, so not doing as big of jumps and drops and everything, but I think that maybe the 8mm axle it's sturdier and it's a bit more heavy duty. So I think that's why they've moved from 6mm to 8mm. So that's kind of the history of why and the difference and you know what they've moved for. So the easiest way to tell what size you have would be to just kind of take a look at the wheel. So I guess for starts, I'll show you what this is, an 8mm axle. So I guess we'll start with this. So a bearing, so this is a standard bearing, and this would be the same kind of bearing that you use for an inline skate, skateboard, a scooter, really any kind of like wheeled things. This is really like the standard size. Like it's the same diameter, it's the same thickness, and then what's the bore is, that center hole is always going to be the same, and that is an 8mm. That's an 8mm bore right there. So when you're looking at a new wheel, or one that at least takes a 8mm axle, you're gonna see it's just that. So this is just the plain bearing, and if you notice, that hole right there is the same as right there, okay? So that would be an 8mm, so this wheel would take an 8mm axle, and it comes off of this is a pair of twisters. This is the Twister SE frame, which takes an 8mm axle. On the other hand, I have this. This is an old wheel off of a pair of K2 Fatty Pros, which came out around 2006, I want to say, 2005. So this is an older wheel. So take a look at the difference between the bore here and the bore on a regular bearing. So if you notice that there's a smaller circle on the inside of that bore. And what that is your spacer. And I'll show you the difference between the spacers here. So this is what is in between this wheel. This is the spacer. This is what it looks like. All that does is sit in between the two bearings on either side of this wheel. On the contrary, this is the 8mm, or the 6mm, sorry, 8mm, 6mm. So you notice this has almost like it's longer, and it has like little nubs. And what that does is that the bearings sit right on it. Okay, so if you can imagine the wheel, it kind of sits like that. So this goes in between, gives us something, the bearings to sit on, and then something for the axle to slide through. Okay, this is a 6mm axle, 6mm spacer on the bearings. So why you would want to switch out your spacers. Say you have an old pair of skates and you want to take the wheels because you like the smaller wheels maybe, or you just like these kind of wheels. And you want to put it on your new pair of skates, but your new pair of skates have a 6mm axle, getting confused here. Your new skates have an 8mm axle and your old wheels have a 6mm spacer. And so, let me find the axle, there we go. So this is your old wheel. This is with a 6mm spacer. This is your 8mm axle. And obviously that's not going to fit in there. That just doesn't work. Easiest way to switch this out and to make this so this wheel will fit on your new skates would be to switch out that spacer. So the easiest way to do it is to get a tool like this. This is called the Rollerblade Pro tool. It's $20 at the Rollerblade store. Skate shops, most skate shops would probably carry it. This thing I find very invaluable. I carry it with me no matter where I go. It fits in your pocket. It's nice and small. Or if you have a little skate bag or a fanny pack or something like that, fits right in there. It's very handy. I always have it with me. I stop and check my axles periodically when I'm skating just to make sure they're tight. I don't want to lose an axle. Don't want to lose a wheel. That can cause a fall, or at the very least, you have to go and replace everything, which is very much of a headache. So I keep one of these with me at all times just to do basic maintenance and stuff, because it folds up nice, so it fits in your pocket, but then it comes with this, a little attachment that goes in there, and then it's an Allen wrench. It's a 4mm Allen wrench that you can now, work on your skates with. Very invaluable. But what it also has is this little nub here on the end. And what that does is it's called a bearing popper or a bearing pusher. And so that's really makes changing out your bearings very simple, very easy. You can do it other ways, but this is the way that I find the easiest. So to do it, to use it, all you gotta do is line up that nub with the spacer. Make sure you're pushing on only the spacer. Remember that little circle that's in between the bearing or inside the bearing. So all I'm doing is just pushing this out, and it's going to be pretty tight. Bearings sit in there tightly. You don't want them to fall out, obviously, when you're skating. So they're in there tight. So it might take a little bit of pressure, a little bit of effort, but it should come out pretty easily. So all you gotta do is just push, and then you popped out your bearing. Spacer came with it. Okay. Other side. What's nice about this, it has like a little ridge on it. You can get it underneath it and just pry it out, and that's it. So now you've got just your wheel. This is your wheel with the core. There's nothing in there. There's no bearing. So now you need to put in your 8mm spacer. Now this is something that you can buy aftermarket. You can even take the ones out of your existing wheels. Say you're getting rid of these wheels. You would then take I'll show you how to do that. So say you just pulled this wheel off of your new pair of skates and you need to get the spacer out from inside there. All you gotta do is take that little nub, pry it out, and your spacer comes out. All right. So there's your spacer. So now, leave that in there. Take your old wheels that you want to put in your new skates, and you're going to take a bearing and you're going to put it on one side, and you just push it in. Should just push in. It should sit there nice and flush. It should be nice and flat against the front of the wheel. And then you're going to take your 8mm spacer. Make sure it's your 8mm spacer. And then it sits there right inside. It kind of floats in between the two bearings. It's not tightly in there. It's kind of works differently than that 6mm, but it'll just sit in between your bearings. So you got your bearing on one side, spacer in between. You just got to put your other bearing on, right? And there you go. So now you have this wheel set up so it can now go on your new frame. It's going to look a little funny here because of how small of the wheel it is. So now you can use your old wheels on your new skates. So I hope that was hope that was pretty easy to follow. I know there's a lot of going on with smaller parts and whatnot, and a lot of switching in and out, a lot of different, 6mm, 8mm, all those numbers. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Reach out to Rollerblade. We're always happy to help and clarify. But hopefully this was good, and you can go forward and you can go and get out there and get skating. So enjoy. Have a great day.